Hello and welcome, Valyeth here, and this is the third and last video about how to heal tanks in M+ content. Today we'll be talking about Protection Paladins and Vengeance Demon Hunters. If you missed the previous two videos, you can click the link above to check out the playlist, or you can click the link in the description. As always, I appreciate your time and support of the channel, and if you like this content, please consider liking the video, leave a comment. I'm always open for feedback, and most importantly, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to reach 200 subscribers before the end of the year. The first tank we'll be discussing is Protection Paladin, a tank that has an incredible amount of CDs to manage, but when done right, can make it an absolute indestructible force of damage mitigation and healing. Not to mention, it's one of the tanks that have the most group utility with their various blessings, the ability to dispel diseases and poisons, as well as multiple ways to CC and interrupt enemies. So let's talk about their active mitigation and how it affects you as a healer. The number one thing a prot paladin needs to do is make sure they generate and spend holy power. We as healers are more interested in how they spend this resource, because it creates the foundation of their active mitigation. The first ability is Shield of the Righteous, which does a decent amount of damage, but more importantly, increases their armor by a good amount. This is excellent at mitigating physical attacks, but less efficient against magic damage. As an added benefit, this spell also provides the paladin with increased strength, as well as 2% increased health, stacking up to 3 times. This should be up close to 100% of the time, as if they let this fall off, they are now significantly squishier and can quickly get beaten down by a melee or physical attack. You as a healer are going to want to track this uptime, which will be the best barometer for you to see if your tank knows what they are doing. Holy Power can also be used to cast Word of Glory, an instant healing spell that can be quite powerful. It is made even more powerful if they cast it on themselves, which turns it into a mini lay on hands. This should be used to dump Holy Power when they already have Shield of the Righteous up, and should be used on either themselves or other party members. A good prot paladin knows how to manage their holy power appropriately, meaning they know when to use it for Shield of the Righteous and when to use it for Word of Glory. For this reason, it's not uncommon to see prot paladins do a decent amount of healing on the charts, as it is innately built into their generator and spender type of gameplay. Another very important thing for them to do is to make sure they have consecration down at all times, and to make sure that they are actually standing in it. Standing in consecration reduces all damage taken by 5%, but it also has the added benefit of healing any party members standing in it thanks to the Golden Path talent. Protection Paladins also have 2 auras to choose from, the only one of which they should be using is Devotion Aura, which reduces all damage to the group or raid by 3%. If you are running with a Protection Paladin and you don't see Devotion Aura in your buff area, please kindly ask him to turn it on. No other aura is remotely close to as useful as Devotion Aura in PvE content. Let's take a look at some polls to show how much of a difference Prot Paladin's active mitigation has on their survivability. I asked our guild's main tank Nox to help me showcase good and bad Prot Paladin gameplay. On the left hand side, I asked him to make some attempt at maintaining Shield of the Righteous and use his healing kit occasionally, but he will be capping Holy Power and not using it correctly. On the right side, I asked him to try to have 100% uptime on Shield of the Righteous, make sure he has consecration down and standing in it, and effectively use Word of Glory when needed and roll his CDs. As you can see, on the left hand side, his health bar dips down very low, very fast. He is using Holy Power for Word of Glory off the bat, which means he's not allowing himself the time to use Shield of the Righteous to mitigate the melee damage, which he could have done by using some CDs when he went in for the encounter. To make things worse, he didn't drop consecration once he had all of the enemies grouped up. If you as a healer see this type of gameplay, you know you're in for a very healing heavy fight. If a tank does not start using their CDs, you are very likely to be spending the entire time healing him as opposed to doing damage or spot healing the rest of the group. Now let's take a look on the right side. He's still taking damage, but is much more consistent and less spiky. He uses CDs going into the fight, which allows him time to build up his holy power, which he then uses to set up his base mitigation via Shield of the Righteous. He continues to roll his CDs throughout the fight, and he uses Word of Glory when needed to top himself off. This is stable tanking, where I as a healer know he has CDs available should he need them, but he's in no immediate danger of death. So how do we as healers help them out? Well, since we know that they need some help going into a fight, making sure that they enter a fight at full health is very helpful, but also make sure that they have enough time to build the holy power they need to start their active mitigation. This means making sure that they survive the first 5 seconds of any encounter. Once they have their active mitigation rolling, you should not need to actively heal them at all, and you can focus your attention elsewhere. As I mentioned at the start of this video, Protection Paladins have an abundance of buttons to click and CDs to manage. So let's dive into their CD arsenal, starting off with Divine Shield, or as it's more commonly known, Bubble. This makes the Paladin immune from all damage sources for 8 seconds on a 5-minute cooldown. If talented into Final Stand, it will also do an AoE taunt. It is a very powerful oh shit button that most Paladins use as a last resort CD when all else has failed. Next up is Ardent Defender, which reduces all damage taken by 20% for 8 seconds on a base 2-minute CD. This one also has the added benefit of having a cheat death component to it, meaning the next strike that would kill the tank if this is up will instead bring the Paladin up to 20% of their maximum health. This should be used for large tank hits to help smooth out the damage curve, especially if the tank doesn't have Shield of the Righteous up at the time. Sentinel is another 2-minute CD defensive that gives the Paladin 15 stacks of 1% increased health and 2% decreased damage taken per stack for 20 seconds. After 5 seconds, these stacks will start to decay unless the Paladin spends at least 3 Holy Power to extend the duration by 1 second. This is another good CD to use for large tank hits, and an even better one if there's a large bleed effect or something similar from bosses. Eye of Tyr is a damage done debuff on surrounding enemies. It reduces their damage done to the tank by 25% for 9 seconds. This is a great CD to push on large and difficult trash pulls, especially if it contains magic damage dealers. And last but not least, Guardian of Ancient Kings. This is when the Paladin brings out their big guns, as this CD reduces all damage taken by 50% for 8 seconds. This is used on especially difficult and damaging pulls or very painful tank busters.
Now let's turn our attention to Vengeance Demon Hunters. Demon Hunters as a class got a substantial rework for Season 3, and Vengeance more specifically received various buffs to spells and opened up their talent tree for much more interesting choices. These changes resulted in them having more consistent damage mitigation and healing, as well as a hefty increase in their damage dealing capabilities. Demon Hunter tanks is my pick for Season 3's meta tank, as they bring a significant amount of utility in the form of various stuns and silences, magic damage debuff via Chaos Brand, and an incredibly strong self-healing kit rendering them one of the best solo tanks in the game, and to top it all off, they will be dishing out some serious damage as well. Let's start off by talking about their active mitigation spells and mechanics. Unlike many other tanks in the game, Vengeance Demon Hunters do not have a large universal defensive kit. They instead rely upon their very strong active mitigation kit and strong self-healing capabilities. The core of Vengeance is based around generating and spending soul fragments, which heal them for 6% of damage taken in the last 5 seconds before they are absorbed. They have a resource bar comprised of Fury, but surprisingly it is not their main source and is less important than the soul fragments themselves. They have multiple ways to generate soul fragments, but the most important one is Fracture. This is their main generator spell and rips out 2 soul fragments from their enemies. The soul fragments are then either run into to provide their benefit, or they use spells to consume them. Spirit Bomb is the most used spell to consume fragments. It also has the added benefit of doing a good amount of damage as well. On top of that, thanks to the Painbringer talent, every time a soul fragment is consumed, it provides the Demon Hunter with 1% damage reduction for 6 seconds. This is why they generally use Spirit Bomb at no less than 5 fragment stacks, so they can maximize their healing and damage reduction. Outside the generating of soul fragments, the most important thing for a Vengeance Demon Hunter to do is make sure they build and maintain as many frailty stacks as possible on as many enemies they can. Frailty is a debuff placed on enemies hit by either Spirit Bomb or Sigil of Flame, and it transforms 10% of the damage that they do to the tank into healing, and it stacks. This is why you always see Demon Hunters start a pull with Sigil of Flame, as it immediately provides them with incoming healing as soon as they engage. In Season 3, thanks to the Illuminated Sigil talent, their sigils now have 2 charges, and also the added benefit that it gives them a 20% increased chance to parry all attacks from enemies affected by their sigils. A lot of the damage a Vengeance Demon Hunter does gets turned into healing thanks to the Charred Warrior talent. It makes 3% of the fire damage they do turn into self-healing, and practically all the damage they do is fire. This combined with Immolation Aura buffed by Infernal Armor, as well as a fast spreading fire brand thanks to the talent Burning Alive, does an incredible amount of healing and damage, and it basically is up all the time. Firebrand in particular is one of their strongest active mitigation abilities, and if used appropriately can provide them with a significant amount of DR on a very large group of enemies. A huge change in Season 3 is that Firebrand now spreads every 1 second instead of every 2 seconds, basically doubling their damage reduction on large trash pulls. And last and by no means least is Demon Spikes, a button they click pretty much every 20 seconds. It provides them with a substantial amount of armor and parry chance for 6 seconds. After Demon Spikes ends, it triggers Calcified Spikes, which provides them with a 12% damage reduction, decaying by 1% per second. A good Demon Hunter knows how to not overlap Demon Spike and also knows how to play around Calcified Spikes. The only real CD they have is Metamorphosis, our 4-minute ability which transforms them into a demon for 15 seconds, increasing their current and maximum health by 50%, as well as their armor by 200%. This can be combined very well with Demon Spikes and a number of their other abilities, so they can generate a silly amount of damage as well as a substantial amount of healing and damage reduction. It is an incredibly powerful CD that if used means that you as a healer can pretty much ignore them for the next 15 to 30 seconds. But now let's take a look at some pulls to show their mitigation kit in action, both in a less than ideal way and one that is significantly better. I asked our guild's raid leader, Sin, to help showcase some Vengeance Demon Hunter gameplay. On the left, I asked him to make some attempt at maintaining Demon Spikes and use his healing kit to keep himself alive, but fail at utilizing his many mitigation spells and mechanics correctly. On the right side, I asked him to try to make sure Demon Spikes is up at all times, as well as stagger his various CDs to make sure he has something to limit damage intake at all times. He also made sure to use his sigils to apply frailty correctly, as well as silence enemies. As you can see on the left, his health bar dips down very low very fast. He is using Demon Spikes, but he's forgetting to use his sigils to increase his parry chance. He is also not effective in stacking up frailty, which is reducing his healing down and causing his health to dip very low frequently. He's also overlapping CDs when he should not, which means he won't have them up later when he needs them. On the right side, he's still taking damage, but is much more consistent and less spiky. He rolls his CDs appropriately, as well as making sure he's using his various sigils to increase healing down and parry chance. He's holding off on using Firebrand off the bat so that his other spells can do their work, and he's not wasting any of their uptime. This is good Demon Hunter tanking, and us as healers should not be too concerned with a tank that plays like this. The added benefit of Demon Hunters is that they have superior kiting skills as well, which means they can create distance between them and enemies quickly in order to allow for CDs to come back and be available. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this series, and as a reminder, please check out the other 2 videos linked in the description below or click the link above. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. I appreciate your support and time, and please let me know what I can do to make the content better. As always, thank you for watching, and please like, subscribe, and share this video.